So we are in Nottingham. This is a 6-bedroom social housing HMO that I purchased £35,000 below market value. I'm going to show you in this video how you can do deals just like this for yourself and how to secure properties below market value. Right guys, stay tuned until the end of this video because I'm going to give you the detailed numbers breakdown because I'm sure you want to know that. But this room, we've kept it as it is. We just obviously ripped off all the old wallpaper and we're going to be plastering this property throughout. There was an issue with this property. So that you see these floorboards right here. If you grab them, you can actually crumble them in your hands. Honestly guys, these floorboards need replacing. So that is an extra cost that's came up, but it's no problem guys. The whole renovation, we're going to be spending £63,000 on the full renovation of this property. So this room staying as it is. Over to the more exciting stuff. So this was the kitchen, and what we've done is we've totally ripped out the kitchen and we actually put a supporting beam right here to kind of make sure that the ceiling doesn't fall down basically, or the walls. So with this room, it was just a kitchen. We've knocked through this wall and we've now made it into an open plan kitchen living area. Well, it will be when it's done. So we're gonna put a brand new kitchen in here. When it comes to kitchens, guys, we usually go with Howden's kitchens and we spend about £4,000 including appliances. Also, there was another issue that we faced. So guys, I don't know if you can tell, but right here, the floor is actually 5 centimeters different to the kitchen floor. So we are gonna have to level this all out. So that is another extra cost what's came up, but we've actually managing to do the whole renovation for 63 grand. So me and my JV partner are happy with that. It's not like kill the deal or anything like that. So the floor and that is coming to £2,000 in extra costs. But if you look outside, you can see that there's not much work required on the outside. We just need to do a little bit of gardening and make that all nice and fresh. So that's the downstairs. Let me take you upstairs. Right guys, so this is the first floor of this property. This property is only 2 stories. Usually I buy these kind of properties and they're around 3 stories. So we have to put in the fire panel, etc. But with this one, we don't need a fire panel. A fire panel is basically like an electric system that it interlinks all the smoke alarms, and it's a HMO requirement if you have a 3-story building. So this was actually just one big bedroom with a corridor leading through here. But what we've done is guys, we've partitioned it. So this room right here, this is actually going to be a communal bathroom. This room is going to be a bedroom. Now the minimum room size requirement in this area of Nottinghamshire is 6.5 square meters. So this is above that. So this is going to be a communal bathroom right here. And then this is going to be a bedroom. So you can see what we've done. We've just turned this large space into 2 communal bathrooms and 2 bedrooms. So I'll show you the other bedrooms. So this is another one. So all in all, we're gonna have 6 bedrooms and 2 communal bathrooms for the whole property, and then 1 large kitchen communal area. So I'll show you the last bedroom through here. So yeah, this is the last bedroom. Now with this property, I'm gonna give you a breakdown of what we need to do to this property. So we need a new kitchen. We need lots of layout changes, which we've already done. We needed to add in the beams. We've also added in new stud work to kind of change the layout. We're going to be adding in FD30 fire doors throughout the whole property. We're going to have the intermittent fire strips. We're going to have emergency lighting, smoke alarms. We're going to be plastering the entire property. We're going to be adding in furniture. Because this one is being leased to a social housing provider, we don't need to do like high-level furniture or feature walls, anything like that. They just want it white throughout, and a nice kitchen and nice bathrooms. So that's what we're gonna do. Obviously there's much more included, like the new plumbing and a new boiler. So there is a lot that we're doing to this property. Hence why it's costing 63 grand to do the whole place and make it HMO compliant. Now this particular social housing provider, they are very strict with like the minor details such as the door gaps. So say if we have a fire door right here, the gaps must be less than 4 millimeters, which is quite strict compared to the councils, etc. But they are strict, so we have to make sure everything is done on point. We do need quite a skilled build team to do this kind of renovation. And trust me, I found out the hard way that a lot of build teams won't be able to do these kind of projects to the way that you want it. But anyway, let's get straight on to the numbers. So you might be watching this video and thinking, right, I want to do these kind of deals myself. Well, I'm going to help you right now. So the first thing to understand is Article 4. Now, Article 4 is a planning restriction which prohibits you from buying a property and converting it into an HMO without planning permission. Okay, so that's what Article 4 does. So what I personally do and what I'd recommend you do is you look in an area and you see where is the Article 4 and then you buy outside of it. Okay, because trust me when I say going through the planning permission process is long. It is headachy, stressful, and it costs money as well. So I still do ones where I apply for planning and I do that, but that's typically if I'm doing like a large HMO, like a 7-bed, 8-bed. But typically I'll buy a property and I'll convert it into a HMO, like a 5-bed, 6-bed HMO, and it'll be outside of the Article 4 area. So that's crucial. That's the first thing to understand. So if the property is outside of the Article 4 area, you can turn it up to a 6-person HMO with no planning applications required. It's called permitted development rights, which is basically means that you have the right to do this conversion without applying for planning permission. So if I look at my portfolio, there's 30 properties and only a handful of them, it's around 3 or 4 of them, are actually in Article 4 areas. And that's because I've bought existing HMOs that already had planning permission, they had the documents, and in the eyes of planning, they were definitely HMOs, so I was safe and I'm able to buy them and then renovate them, rent them out, etc. So normally I buy outside of Article 4. So that's the first thing to understand. Now guys, you might hear me saying a lot in this video, HMO. HMO just stands for House of Multiple Occupants, and it's basically a shared house, shared accommodation, where you take a property and rent it out on a room by room basis. So this deal type is called social housing HMOs. And that's what we're going to be speaking about in this video. I'm going to be leasing this property to a social housing provider. Now, just for more context here, the reason I do that rather than renting it to working professional HMO tenants is because the social housing provider that I'll be leasing this property to, they cover all of the bills, they pay me a good rent, they deal with all the maintenance, and they don't charge me for it, they cover it themselves. They give me a long lease on the property, it's going to be around 7 years. It's government backed and there's no management. There's no management costs and I don't even have to get involved with the management. Now in terms of maintenance, say for example, the roof blew off or something crazy happened to the actual building itself, then yeah, I would still have to cover that. But in terms of like the internal, so you know, say like someone kicked off a door or the sink broke, they will deal with it. So all like your general maintenance, they will deal with it and cover the cost of that, which is a massive benefit rather than when you've got a working professional HMO and you have a leaky tap, you have to send out the plumber, you have to organize it, and it's just quite headachy. Right, there is a few things to keep in mind with social housing HMOs. Number one is you're going to need to be eligible for a social housing HMO mortgage because not a lot of people speak about this. How it works is it's a very specific type of mortgage that you're going to need. So you basically, there's lots of lenders out there that will do HMO mortgages, but with a social housing HMO mortgage, it's quite different because they're a little bit more strict on the requirements and the eligibility. So in order to be eligible for these kind of mortgages, you typically will have to have a residential property and buy-to-let experience, or you'll have to have a lot of HMO experience. So I'm not a mortgage broker and I'm definitely not a lender. I'm not the bank that will be giving out these mortgages. So I can't tell you if you'll be accepted or not. But these are just the rough guidelines on what you would need to be eligible. So don't quote me on this. You'll need to speak with a broker. And if you do need a mortgage broker, I'd recommend you use Mortgage Style. They've really had my back over the years. I've had situations, more complex deals where I was struggling and needed a really good broker that wasn't just going to give up on the deal because it was too hard. So Mortgage Style, they've never gave up on me. They are really, really good. So I'll put their link in the description of this video. So the next thing is, how do you find social housing providers? Well, guys, finding social housing providers is all about positioning yourself with a professional brand and image and then reaching out, really reaching out to as many providers as you can. You've got some of the main ones in the UK, which is Mears and Serco, but you also have like over 1,500 social housing providers in the UK. So you're not stuck for choice, and a lot of them are really desperate for properties. So once you build that relationship with them, you in a great position because they really need houses. They need to meet their targets and there's just not enough houses. So that's why they work with landlords like myself and basically we lease them the property. So I work with 4 different social housing providers and they all like house different tenant types. So one of the social housing providers, they house tenants that have just come out of the care system. So like young people that have just come out of care and they have like support workers that kind of visit them every day sometimes. So yeah, that's one of them. The other social housing providers, they might house like refugee tenants, and each social housing provider will have their own criteria on who they actually house. I don't get involved with it. I've never actually met any of my tenants in my social housing properties just because they deal with all the management, so I don't have to get involved. I just make sure that I give them really nice, safe properties to live in. The next thing is purchasing the right property because you really do make the money when you buy. So this is probably the most important part about what you're doing. Because say for example, you buy a property and you overpay for that property, you're renovating it, now you're in kind of negative equity because it's not going to be worth more than you actually have paid and spent on it. So it's crucial to understand that you need to be picky with whatever you buy. Finding the right deal is crucial. So how I find deals is in 2 different ways. Online, so we're talking Rightmove and Zoopla, and then also direct to landlord. Now this property was online and they was very motivated to sell, which is ideal for you as the buyer because it puts you in a power position. When you're looking online, you need to be booking in a lot of viewings, and you can get a team member to do it for you. You need to be viewing a lot of properties and making a lot of offers. So follow my channel, subscribe. I've got tons of videos on like how to find deals, but just remember guys that you need to be doing a lot of viewings because a lot of people say, I can't find any deals, man. But I say, how many have you viewed? They said, oh, I've only viewed 1 in the last 4 months. And I'm like, well, that's why. You know, you need to be out there working hard, putting in that work and doing viewings and making offers. So this is an important part as well, guys. You need to close the deal with the social housing provider and then you find the deal, because the social housing provider will tell you what areas they operate in, what rent settings you can get, so how much rent they'll actually pay, and it might be different in different areas. So for example, this provider, they pay like £420 for some areas, they pay 400 in other areas, and this one is like 385. So we'll get onto the details numbers very, very soon, but I just need you to understand that this is the process. You close a deal with the provider, then you find the deal and buy the deal. Another thing to understand, and this will really help you, is the LTV. So LTV stands for loan to value. Now, typically with a buy-to-let property or like a buy-to-let HMO, it'll be 75% LTV once you've done up the property and you've refinancing it. So that basically means, say you have a house that's worth £100,000, they'll give you a loan for 75% of that. So £75,000 loan they'll give you. So the mortgage balance will be 75k. However, with social housing, it's 65% LTV. And what that means for you is when you refinance the property, you'll pull out less money than you would if it was a normal HMO or buy-to-let property. So that's something to keep in mind. So there are pros and cons to this strategy. However, for me, this is one of my favorite strategies and probably the strategy that I'm most heavy on in property. I also do commercial property. I do buy-to-lets like single lets. I do some Airbnbs, and I do normal HMOs, working professional HMOs, and I do social housing HMOs as well. This is probably my favorite strategy just because it's the most passive and you know how much money you're going to make every single month. That's one reason why I love it. So another thing you need to know is buying the actual property. Once you've found a deal, you've got it secured, it's going to take you, normally it takes me around 3 to 4 months to actually get the keys. So it is quite long-winded in terms of the process, but it's 100% worth it. You're building wealth through this strategy. So once you have the keys, another thing you're going to need to make sure you do is get a really good build team. Now, we're not going to get into this on this video too much, but I'm going to give you 2 top tips. Tip number 1 is get a detailed quotation, not an estimate. Make sure you have a detailed quote with every single thing that you need doing in the property listed on this quotation. This will cover your back. Okay, this will make sure you're covered, because if they're not doing it, what you need, then they're not going to get paid. And if it went to court, then you can provide this document. The second thing is payment schedule. So you're going to need a payment schedule which says how you're going to pay the builders. You don't want to pay builders up front. They need to do some work. You pay them the first tranche, which just basically means, say if the renovation is 50k, you can split it up into 5 payments of £10,000. That's the best way of doing it, guys, is having payment terms already laid out. There's no confusion, there's no stress. They know when they're getting paid, you know when you've got to pay. So that's what I'd say on that. Another thing is when you're working with a social housing provider, depending on what provider you're going with, they all kind of work a little bit differently. But this provider, they're very strict on what they want. So for example, HMO licensing requirements could be here, but their requirements are actually here. So they want you to go above and beyond to make sure their tenants are safe. So for example, the council's requirements might be 11mm gaps in the fire doors. So the gaps around the fire doors have to be 11mm. However, this social housing provider, they've got to be 4mm, which is very strict. And it takes a very skilled builder to actually do that. Okay, so these things, you have to factor them into your renovation costs and make sure you have a very competent team that know what they're doing. Ideally, they'll have worked with social housing providers before, and that's going to help you guys. As well, the social housing providers, when you lease them the property, they'll give you the lease, which you need to thoroughly check through, make sure you're happy with it before you sign it. And basically how it works is the first month is backdated, so you don't get paid for the first month. They will pay you on month 2, all right? So that's something you need to factor in as well. So if you're relying on that rent on month number 1, you're not going to get it because a lot of providers will pay a month in arrears. So they'll pay on month 2 rather than month 1 that you would get with a normal tenant or tenancy. Now, another thing is you need to be doing regular checkups. So I'd recommend every month you go to the property, you schedule in an inspection, and you've got the rights to do that as a landlord to check on your property to make sure they're not trashing it. A lot of people get put off by social housing because they believe that the tenants will trash the property. It's never happened to me, and I can't really see it happening just because if those tenants trash the property, they know they've ruined their chance. They're not going to be able to get another house with this organization. So in my experience, the tenants I've got in my social housing properties, they actually look after the properties better than a lot of my working professional tenants, which is crazy. But that's just kind of the way it is. So I wouldn't let that put you off, but you do need to be viewing it every month just to check up. Just go there, check up, make sure everything's good, and it gives you peace of mind as well as the property owner. Now, how it works in terms of payments is basically they'll give you a set rate. So before you even purchase the property, you would have closed the deal with them and they'll let you know how much they're going to pay every single month. So they'll usually give you a figure and they'll say, this is how much we can pay per month per tenant. So for example, you've got a 6-bed HMO. This example here, this property, we're going to get £2,310 per month. So that works out to be £385 per month per room. So it doesn't matter if one of the rooms is empty, you still get paid. Typically, they will always make sure their properties are full, but that's on them. And the crazy thing is they might be paying you £2,310 per month for a 6-bed, but they might get, say, £8,000 or £9,000 for that same property. So they're really killing it. And people ask me, why don't you make a social housing business? I just say no. I don't want to deal with all of that hassle of dealing with tenants and dealing with the councils and the government. So I just don't want to do it myself personally. So the next section of this video is how to purchase properties below market value. Now guys, it's going to get easier over time because in order to purchase something below market value, you need to understand what is its market value. And that is what's going to be easier over time. Understanding that a property might be listed for £100,000 online, but it might only be worth £80,000. So the way to determine a property's market value is by number 1, looking at comparables. You need to be looking online and see what similar properties have sold recently in that area. So go on to Rightmove sold prices, type in the full address, and you should be able to find comparables on there. That'll give you a great indication on how much the property is actually worth. Then you want to be trying to buy it under that price. When you buy a property below market value, you're immediately creating equity for yourself. So say you buy a property for £80,000, that's worth £100,000. You've just made £20,000 in equity. So you've built your wealth. You've just made 20k. Who doesn't want to make 20k just like that? That's the beauty of buying assets below market value.
Now, for me, I do a large volume of deals. So I've had it before in 1 year, I purchased 13 properties in 1 year. Now, that was a stressful year. But when you're doing a large volume of deals, you're not always going to be, hunting and trying to get below market value for every single deal. It's just not realistic. They are hard to do, and I don't come across them every day. Another way to find out the true market value of a property is to get a valuation report done by a surveyor. So the surveyor will work for the bank. The bank will go out there and they'll tell you how much it's worth in its current condition. Now, you don't want to go to an estate agent to get this valuation done because, to be honest with you, estate agents, they've got their own agenda and they won't give you like the accurate value like a surveyor would. So you normally pay around £500 for a report that's done by a surveyor that works for the bank. And that will give you the current market value. You can also, if you want to take it a step further, do a GDV valuation, which is where you will get the surveyor to go out. They'll tell you how much its current worth is, how much its current market value is. And then also, once you've done the works, how much it's going to be once you've done those works. So that's great. And if you're ever unsure, if you're making a mistake on a property, get a GDV valuation. Costs a little bit more. It's probably around £1,000 to get that kind of valuation, but it's definitely worth it if you're new to the game or you're just not sure if you're making a mistake by buying this particular property. But how to get them below market value? Now again, it comes down to doing a lot of viewings and making a lot of cheeky offers. So I'm going to give you a quick story. This particular property in this video was listed for £125,000. And someone went to buy it, they pulled out of the deal, so it was back on the market. The seller was getting agitated, they really wanted to sell it, they had other stuff they wanted to do with the money, they just wanted rid. It was an empty house and it laid on the market for another month. Then we followed up with the agent that was selling the property and we made a cheeky offer for £110,000. They agreed because the seller was desperate, there was no other offers because she's listed it quite high. In its current condition, it would need someone to really spend a lot of money to make it a valuable asset. So the whole renovation cost on this one is £63,000, but that's to turn it to a 6-bed HMO. If we was turning this property into like a family home, could probably do it for around £45,000. So you can see the difference there. It's a good, rough 20k difference to do it to a 6-bed HMO versus a family home. Obviously, it depends what specifications and what kind of kitchen and bathrooms you put in the property, but that gives you an idea. So anyway, it was listed for 125, we secured it at 110, and this is how we got it below market value. Once we was buying the property, you have to do your conveyancing process, which is where the solicitor will do lots of checks on the property. Something flagged up on one of the reports. It was basically a mining report, and around 10-15 years ago, someone actually made a claim in that area. Okay, so not on the property, but in the area. I think it was like a 5-mile radius. Someone had made a claim for £100,000 like 10-15 years ago. So we was able to use that as leverage. So we said to the seller, look, we still want to buy it, but based on this, we can't pay that kind of price. We can't pay 110 anymore. We need to pay less. Now, based on the fact that the seller was motivated, they needed to sell it fast, we was able to negotiate the price down to £85,000. We went in with 80, they rejected that, then we finished on 85k. We also got a GDV valuation. On the GDV valuation, they said that once the property's done and it's a 6-bed social housing HMO, it should be worth £230,000. So that's great. We know how much it's going to be worth when it's done. We were buying it for only 85k, but its current market value as it is, they valued it at £120,000. So that means we purchased this one £35,000 below market value. So that's a quick example on how you can do it. But other ways that you can get below market value deals is view loads of properties, make loads of cheeky offers, and some of them will stick. Okay, my first property I ever purchased, I purchased that one £25,000 below market value. Again, it was a desperate seller. They needed to sell, they needed a quick sale. And I just made a cheeky offer. It was listed for 150, I offered 120, we finished on 125. And I agreed to buy it within 8 weeks. It did take me a bit longer to buy it than 8 weeks. I didn't really know what I was doing. I was kind of winging it on my first one. I didn't really have a mentor, any support. So it did take about 3 months, I'm not gonna lie. But We got the deal done for 125, and then a year later, I refinanced it at 150. So that's another example on how you can do it. Okay, let's go through the detailed numbers on this deal. So purchase price, £85,000. Our purchase costs were £31,025.68. So to actually get the keys for this property, that's how much it cost us. We paid upfront 12 months for the bridge. So we paid all of our financing costs, like our bridge fees, upfront. So you can pay your bridge fees monthly or you can pay them upfront. We decided to do it upfront. So our renovation costs, we actually budgeted and we said, right, we should be able to do this for less than £60,000. The refurb came in at £63,000. Okay, so it was £3,000 above what we kind of expected it to be. However, that's why it's important to have a contingency of like around 10%. So we do fall in within that bracket, so that's fine. So yeah, refurb cost 63 grand. So to do this entire project, so this is all the costs of this project, it costs £94,025.68. And that's all the costs included. So we're talking deposit, refurb cost, stamp duty, legal fees, everything. That comes to £94,025.68. Right guys, so we purchased this property on a 10% deposit. Yeah, that's right, 10% deposit. So the bridge on this one was a 90% LTV bridge. So our deposit was £8,500. Our bridge fees, the total of 12 months at 0.84%, was £7,711.20. And that's because we paid upfront. So we paid that upfront for the whole 12 months. The stamp duty was £2,550. And we got this one through before the stamp duty increased. Okay, so this was the old rates. Now the legal fees, because it's bridging, you have to cover the solicitor fees for the bridge lender. So the lender that's given us the mortgage, the bridging loan, we have to cover their legal fees, which was £1,560. And then our solicitors were £4,297.88. Now, yes, you can get solicitors that are cheaper. However, for me, I'd rather pay slightly more. I'd rather pay an extra grand, grand and a half to make sure that I'm using my solicitor that will get the deal done in the correct manner, and I know I can trust them that they'll pick up on anything. And that's what they did. They picked up on an issue on this one and we used it as leverage. So that's a great example of solicitors. It's not always about the cheapest solicitor. So solicitor fees for our side was 4297.88. So the valuation, because we did it on, bridge, got a GDV valuation, we got a commercial GDV valuation. So that was £2,400. The HMO license, the fee actually gets covered by the social housing provider, which is great, which saves us about £800. So that's perfect. And then there is a sourcing fee on this one, which I pay to my team. So when we purchased this property, I had my team find the Rightmove link. They did the viewing and they helped with the legal work, the getting it through. So they did a lot of work on this deal. They're going to get £2,000 from this deal. Also, the lender's fees, procurement fees, packages fees, general insurance fee, funds release fee and title insurance fee came to £2,006.60. That brings the total spend to £94,025.68. So you're looking to do a similar kind of deal, then you could use a 10% deposit. So a 90% LTV bridge, you could do that. However, just like getting a social housing mortgage, to get a 90% bridge, the lenders are a little bit more strict in terms of they won't just give this kind of product to anybody. You do have to have experience. They'll look at it on a case-by-case basis. So there's no guarantee you can get a 90% bridge. So I'd say when you're running your numbers, if you don't have any properties yet, then you want to be running the numbers based on a 25% deposit, so a 75% LTV bridge. And this is not a development finance bridge. That is a different type that you can get, but based on the interest rates right now, I wouldn't recommend it. If you've got enough money where you can purchase the property with a 25% deposit on a bridge and you can fund the renovation yourself, that's the best way to do it, guys. So I don't like doing development finance bridges because development finance is where you'll pay the 25% or the 10% deposit and they will fund 100% of the renovation. However, they make you jump through a lot of hoops, and I don't like jumping through hoops, guys. I want to be able to crack on, get my builders out there, start the works without having to answer to these asset managers, which is where the lender will come out and they'll see what works you've done before they release the next payment to you. So yeah, that's another story for another time. But development finance is great if you're doing like a massive big project, like a massive, commercial to residential conversion, something like that. Or I'm doing one now, which we are going to be using development finance on, but I try and avoid it if I can, just because it's quite headachy and expensive to do. Right now, this property, as it is right now, the monthly income, once we've leased it to the provider, will be £2,310 per month. And the outgoings right now are 0. So the return on investment will be 29.48%. So that would be 41 months until we've kind of recouped all of our initial costs on this project, if we kept it for its value of 85k. Now, obviously that's not going to happen. We did get a GDV valuation. They said it will get valued at 230, but let's be conservative here. And because the banks right now, because Labour's came into party, they've making lots of changes to kind of everything. They've increased stamp duty. There's lots of uncertainty in the air right now. So I think trying to get properties valued at, say, this one for 230, I just don't know if it's going to happen. We're going to have to see how it plays out. But let's just say, for example, this one got valued at £170,000. That means we would pull out £34,000. We would leave in £60,025.68. The monthly income would still be 2310, and our mortgage payment would be £599, and the net profit will be £1,711, bringing us to a return on investment of 34.21%, and that would take us 35 months to get all of our initial capital back. So that's £60,025.68 would take us 35 months to get all of that back. Now, let's say it gets valued at 220. That means we'll be pulling out £66,500 and leaving in £27,525.68. So the monthly mortgage payment would be 775, and the net profit per month would be £1,535, giving us a return on investment of 66.92%. And it would take us 18 months to get back our investment. Okay, so if it does get valued at 220, it's happy days, because a 66.92% return on investment is crazy. To be honest, I'm very, very happy. Even if it gets valued at 170k, a 34.21% return on investment is still very, very good. Now, of course, this is a joint venture. So my joint venture partner funded 100% of this deal. I did all of the work. I found the deal, managed the full renovation process. Me and my team deal with all the conveyancing, everything. We deal with everything. It's very hands-off for my partner. All I do is give my partner regular updates. When we found the deal, he obviously signed off on it, said he's happy to go ahead on it. And yeah, we just bought the property and we're renovating it and we're going to refinance it. So I did all the work and then we split the profits 50-50. When we're looking at the ROI, so for example, if it gets valued at 170, the ROI is 34.21%. So because we split the profits 50-50, my joint venture partner would get a 17.10% return on his investment if it gets valued at 170, which is still very, very good in this market. So that's something to keep in mind. So if you've got a joint venture partner involved, or if it's just you on your own, you need to factor that in as well. Keep in mind as well, interest rates are high right now. Once interest rates come back down, we will be refinancing a lot of properties to bring our monthly payments down. So that's exciting, because a property right now might be profiting you, say, £1,500, but if you was on a different interest rate, it might be profiting you £1,800 or £2,000 per month. And that's the thing I love about property, is it's a long play. It's a long-term wealth building strategy. That's how I use property. I'm not really interested in flips or other strategies where it's like property sourcing, where it's just quick cash injections and, quick book. This is the long book. This is the long play, building wealth, holding onto the properties and just getting our monthly return every single month. Now, the main metric that I'm tracking here is the ROI, return on cash invested, ROCI. How much money have we got left in the deal and how much profit are we making? And then we can calculate the ROCI. Now, with these social housing ones, it's very easy to get a clear ROCI, because the outgoings don't really fluctuate. We have our insurance, usually £50 a month. We have our mortgage payment, which is very easy to track. That's a fixed amount. And the income is fixed from the provider. So unless the provider breaks the contract and they give you the property back, then it can change. But we're pretty safe on knowing how much profit we're gonna make every single month. Now, I have had a provider in the past give me a property back after 2 months. We had it agreed on a crazy rate. So I had like £530 per room that they were paying. We was smiling, we was happy. And then it turns out they want to give us the property back after like 2 months. So it was not ideal at all. But that's only happened one time, and I've done over 32 deals now. I've sold 2 properties and I currently own 30 properties. So that gives you kind of a snapshot on what I've done. And for me, it's quite unlikely that the provider will give the property back, because you've got to think, if they're making say 7, 8, 9, 10 grand a month and they're paying you 2,310 for a 6-bed, come on, do the maths. Why would they give it you back? Of course, there's other factors, for example, changes within the government, that they might lose their contract with the government and have to give it you back. But hey, that's business, things happen. And one thing I would say, guys, is stress. If you can't handle stress very well, don't do social housing HMOs, because you have to be willing to take on stress, deal with the providers, find the right deal with any issues that come up. It's hard work, guys, it is. So if you're not thick-skinned, then don't do it. That's what I would say to you. But if you like challenges, you're a problem solver, then do it, okay? Because it will be the best thing you've ever done. Hope you've enjoyed this video, guys. Remember to like, comment, subscribe, and stay tuned for more videos coming your way.